Welcome back to Feel Good with Carly Wood. I should have really thought the name out, you guys, when I did my name change. If you're new and you're listening and you're tuning in for the first time, I have been on the internet for a while, and I was recently known as Carly Styles. It was like my first branded name that I came up with when I decided to make my YouTube, Instagram. And then I did a rebrand. My life has just changed so much in the past decade since I've been on social media. And Carly Styles, I don't know her anymore, right? I love her, and I loved everything that she taught me and brought to the internet, but it was time, and I wanted to make a name change. And so I changed it to Feel Good with Carly, because I really hone in on what I want this place or this space to be. I want it to be a safe place for you to find confidence in who you are and what you want to be in this life. And so the name just Feel Good with Carly, you can feel good with me. We can rely on each other to help each other through life. And I think my demographic really is millennial women as we are reaching middle age of life. Is that so crazy to say? Are we middle age? Is 37 middle age? If not, we're still young. We're still young at heart, right? And so the name Feel Good with Carly, I've had some feedback. I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you like the name? Do you like the name change? Somebody said, as a business, this it should stand out. It should be punchy. It should be memorable. And I'm like, okay, well, what if it's Feel Good with Carly Wood? And then it just kind of flows. So anyways, welcome back to episode 2. If you haven't watched the intro, I kind of peel back the layers on how this podcast and new show on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, was born, where it came from, kind of my history, and just a little bit more about me, how we got to this point. And then episode 1, I had my husband on. We talked about dealing with anxiety, how that came up later for us in life, depression, how I struggled really bad with my 5th baby, which was such a curveball because all my other kids, I didn't really go through the postpartum blues, and it really hit me this summer when she was around 6, 7, 8 months. So later on then, when you have postpartum. And anyway, so that episode was really good, and we just had an honest, open conversation about how to deal with anxiety and depression, and our, where we're at with that and how we deal with it. So if that's something that you're interested in, listen to this episode first, because we're going to be talking about finding confidence in sex. Finding confidence in sex, whether you're getting married, you've been married for 7 years, 10 years, finding that spark, and really just kind of goes in line with Valentine's. It's February, and this week is Valentine's week, and so we're gonna be talking about sex. And I have a product recommendation for you that we're gonna get to and talk about. And then I put out there on Instagram, I was like, hey, I want you guys to be the conversation, the bulk of the conversation that we're gonna be having today. And I wanna hear from you, where are you at? Ask me questions, feedback, tips, and I've gotten some good responses. So we're gonna dive right in. Let's just jump in. The first submission was how to not feel guilty for sex, life decreasing after kids. More than once a week feels like a job when you are a working full-time and a mom. That, I think, first and foremost, you're not alone. There's so many couples who are in your same boat and are experiencing that. I saw a reel the other day. It was from a therapist, and she was saying the silent killer of marriages is nothing actually big, like cheating or debt or, you're whatever. It's the silent killer in marriage is just silently growing apart, where it's at the end of the day, you're exhausted, he's exhausted. You've been pouring into your job, into your kids, into your goals, and into your hobbies, and the house is a mess, and the laundry isn't done. And at the end of the day, it's just silently kind of retracting, and just being in your own space and not leaning on one another. And just, that repetitive behavior of really not just taking time to carve out for one another after a long day, because you guys know those days add up really quickly, and also those days are into weeks, and those weeks are into months, and all of a sudden it's oh my gosh, I don't remember the last time I connected with my spouse, or leaned on him or her, or we just had time to connect. That really stuck out to me, because I was oh my gosh, we're really guilty of that. It's just hard. It's so hard. you just feel safe. I think you're like at this place of comfort where you feel safe, right? And you don't feel like you forget that you still need to try, that you still need to date, that you still need to make things special. Because when you're dating, you're trying your absolute hardest to put your best foot forward and win them over, right? And it still feels special and new and fun and exciting. But as life goes on and you get married and you have kids, and that safety net feels like it's always there, it's really easy to get away from taking time to make things special and fun again. And so I think as long as you have an honest, open conversation with your partner and be like, hey, I'm feeling really distant from you. Like, how can we connect again? And just taking time to, like, even if you just set up a board game, something that we like to do is just like have fun and laugh, because everything else feels really heavy and serious and exhausting. And so sometimes just taking time to have fun with your partner and laugh with them, can rekindle that like fun, youthful dating spark. But don't feel guilt. Like, that's the last thing that you need to be feeling is guilt. Getting on the same page as your partner and checking in with them can go such a long ways. And I think sometimes we think it has to be this big act and this like overnight trip and all these things. And sometimes all you need is like one dinner together, or one laugh together, or 10 minutes on the couch together, or just like 3 minutes of like hugging, right? 60 seconds isn't long enough, but like minutes of actual just like touching and connection again, that can really go a long way, because we don't have time. You're right, we don't have time. So stop feeling guilty, ditch the guilt. That's not gonna drive your emotions or your goals or anything closer, right? Guilt doesn't solve anything. It just makes you feel bad. And in fact, it does the opposite. And just be realistic. Like, what can I do right now? A small, simple change that can help us. Oh, this one is juicy. The tips on struggling with the big O during sexual time, sex. So I am a big fan. I actually got sent this as a PR in the mail, and I was like, this is Coco New. It's lube. And I never really understood why I needed lube, or like if I needed it. I was raised in a family where you just like, don't talk about sex. No one talks about sex. And like my whole experience into sex, no one was there to like walk me through the logistics of everything, which I'm like taking a note out of my parents' book. I love them so much. I have such great parents, but that's just not something they felt comfortable talking with. I think it's like a generational thing. I don't know. Me and my grandma talk about sex and we like make jokes about it, but my mom is just, it's just not something she's like, Carly, and I just not something she wants to talk about. And I get it, because like going into like this headspace of like talking to my kids about it, I'm like, yeah, it does. There's like moments where it feels like weird or silly or uncomfortable, but I'm like, maybe that's just like what we need to normalize, is just the fact that sex is normal. It is good. It is healthy. And it is something that human beings love and enjoy and can like turn to for like a powerfuful tool in their relationship. And so something that like when I got this PR, going back now, when I got this in the mail as a PR box from Coco New, I was like, oh yeah, like cool. And then one night we just like randomly pulled it out and used it. And now I'm like, I will recommend this to everyone. And you have to get the hemp infused one. It is just so good. It is so good. It makes things last longer. It makes things feel more like sensitive. I don't know. I just really love it. And I have a discount code with them. So if it's something that like you're looking to like spice things up, or you want to try it, freaking try it. It's so good. You have to report back. You have to let me know. Down in the show notes, I'll leave like the discount code for you guys. And remember, get the hemp infused one. We had like there's like a pack where you can get, it's like water infused, just the oil, and then this one is the hemp infused. I can't remember. There's 3 different kinds. The hemp infused one, game changer, so good. But also, I think achieving the big O, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes like for me, it's like a mental thing. Like it's so hard for me to just jump in the moment and like be ready to go for it. I feel like leading up to it all day long helps so much. A lot of physical touch, a lot of kissing, like flirty texts, just like kind of like the build up process, right? Like it's so hard for me to like not think about it at all day long. I'm thinking about kids and work and reports and numbers and all these things. Then all of a sudden it's like jumping into the act and just like being ready to go. It's like, that's hard, so hard for me to go from 0 to 100 really quickly. And so it's like, if that's something that's like on the radar, try to like really like build up the suspense and the hype and the fun in it, and like send a flirty text, send a cute picture, you know, send like a flirty like suggestion or whatever, or like buy this and surprise your partner. But like the lead up and like just getting your mind mentally like warmed up, I think helps a lot. And then also like just trying new things and being open with your partner and telling them that, because everybody is so different. Everybody is made, not everybody, our bodies. I probably sound like I have an accent. Our bodies are all different and we all feel pleasure in different ways. And so like there's no shame in that, and just like maybe be open to like shopping around for, I don't know, like a vibrator or something fun. It could be like a fun date night where you just like get to go explore and find something new to try and have conversation. And I know it might feel weird or silly, but it will make you feel so much closer with your partner. And remember, like it should be enjoyable for you too, right? It's not just for them, like it's for you as a couple, and it's also for you as well. Okay, this is such a great one, and a lot of people sent this in, but how to keep the spice alive after kids. That goes back to like kind of what we were talking about earlier. I think just like the dating phase of like, you know, really you have to date your spouse. You have to remember to flirt with them. You know, you have to remember to like make them feel seen and special and sexy. And so like the lead up is always fun for me. I love the flirty text. I love like the playful like slap on the butt and just like little touches and moments during the day. Like just grab them and make out with them randomly in the pantry or the closet or the shower or whatever. And just like build that up and just make it playful and make it fun. Try to do it somewhere new where you're like out of your norm that feels like spicy. Maybe it's in your car after date night, or on the couch where you're watching a movie, or in your closet, wherever. But just do something that's different than like the routine of what you're in. Sometimes just breaking up that routine is so helpful. Also, like lingerie could be really fun, or just going on like a sexy date night, something like that, where it's like just feels like you're giving it attention and love, because it is so hard with kids. It's so hard with kids, and sometimes it does feel like, well, this is the 3 minutes that we have, so let's just figure it out. But that part of your relationship deserves attention, and it deserves being taken care of, and it is so important. I can always tell when we're like, Jackson and I haven't like connected like that in a while, because we start getting like short with each other and a little feisty. I'm like, oh, we just need to have sex and then it will fix everything. And it's so weird. Like then we do, and we're closer and we're nicer and we're more patient with one another. So I totally get it. You're not alone. We've all been there. And yeah, take those tips and see if it helps. Let me know. This is a great one. I'm scared, I'm not experienced, and it worries me for future partners who are. Advice. First of all, you need to worry about yourself. And I mean that with all the love. Like this idea and this expectation of that we're in, like you're having sex is for them, is like, so it's just overrun. And we need to like really just like denormalize that, because that's just not true at all, right? When you are with a partner, like it is as much for you and your pleasure and your connection and for you as it is for them. And you're not there, like you don't owe them anything and they don't owe you anything. It's something that you mutually, respectfully agree on and you're doing together, and communicating about that is so important. And when you're with the right person, they will make you feel safe and they won't make you feel weird or shy or silly. And if you have an insecurity or something that you're not comfortable with, vocalize that. And even if you're like, hey, I don't feel like I'm very experienced, like I feel shy about this, or I feel like I'm not as experienced, like it's not, I think it's also about chemistry, right? Like you could be with somebody who maybe is like an expert in this field, right? But if your chemistry is off, if your mood is off, if your mental game is off, like you can have like a bad connection and it can be bad sex, right? So don't think that it's like all on your lap to like make their experience so great. Like just worry about you, worry about being honest, worry about communicating, and having like healthy boundaries for yourself. And don't feel like you owe somebody some awesome sexual porn star show. Like you just don't. Society makes us have this like heavy pressure, especially for women. Like society makes us feel like if we're not looking like a Victoria's Secret model, if our bodies aren't looking like a Victoria's Secret model with our hair blowing back and our beautiful cleavage and this amazing lingerie and this like beautiful skin, that like we're not we can't be sexy or desired or, you know, like sought after. And that's just not true. Like society just over sexualizes women so deeply that I think it messes with our minds so much, and we lose this connection with our personal selves and like our home and who we are, of feeling like I can be loved and desired and sexy and, you know, like wanted by my partner without having to fit into this like picture perfect moment. Don't feel like you owe them anything, right? No one deserves sex, or you don't owe sex to anyone. Like, you owe yourself honesty, and you owe yourself like pleasure and trusting yourself. And when you're with the right person, they will make you feel that way. Was sex different for you while breastfeeding? Does it go back? Yes and no. Hormones are so tricky in women and how they make us feel. For me though, like, I didn't feel so sexy when I was breastfeeding because my boobs were like overly huge. I already have big boobs, and so when my milk comes in, they're just like so big, and they felt like they were veiny, and like my milk was coming out, and like I had to keep on my bra so that my milk wasn't everywhere, and I just didn't feel like my boobs were mine. You know what I'm saying? And so it was hard to share that part of me because I felt like, well, these are for the baby. I don't know. These are just like where I was at with it. And I also felt like I was extra like hot and sweaty and when I was producing milk. And so that combination just never made me feel like sexy. But you have to remember, like with breastfeeding, like the purpose of your breastfeeding journey is so beautiful. And like you're doing such a service for your family, for your baby, and it will end faster than you know it. And your milk will dry up and you will start to feel more like connected with your body. And this isn't everybody, not everybody feels that way. Some women love when they're breastfeeding because their boobs get big and they have like cleavage finally. For me, it was like too much. Like I just felt like so heavy, top heavy, and just not like myself. But I just always reminded myself, like, this phase goes by so quickly. I've had 5 kids, I've breastfed them all, and it goes by so quickly. And it is like weird to say, but you will miss that, and you will miss that part of your journey. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, maybe you'll be grateful. You're like, I did it, I did my service and I'm done. But it ends, and like, you know, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, your partner is probably not thinking about it as much as you are. You're probably overthinking it. So try to just like relax and enjoy it, and like always just communicate and talk with your partner, and just, you know, help yourself to feel safe and seen and heard. And yeah, just do your best. Maybe appreciate your new cleavage, your extra. I feel like I kind of got the same repeating message or underlying tone that a lot of you asked, but just like in a different way. And it was around the idea and the lines of like feeling confidence after having kids and sex after kids, and like your body going through changes after C-sections or postpartum or breastfeeding, like basically just feeling confident in your body after your body has gone through that transition. And I think that this is something that we could talk about for so long, and something that I've had a really hard time wrapping my mind around until I had my 4th and 5th baby, and it got a little bit easier for me. And I think that this conversation is such a deeper conversation that we could have, and something that more women need to hear and tune in on. And not everyone feels this way. Some women feel more confident after having a baby. Some women feel just the same. You know, I would say, like, according to my DMs and like what you guys sent, it does feel like a lot of us are kind of in that same boat where you feel a little bit like you're struggling after you have a baby. Your body has changed. Your hips have gotten wider. Maybe you got stretch marks or more cellulite, or your skin is sagging, or like your nipples are just bigger, or you're producing milk, whatever. Your body is just different, right? It looks different. It feels different. Mentally, that affects you when you're like looking at yourself in the mirror and you're holding yourself hostage compared to like what you used to look like. And that's like the biggest mistake that a lot of us don't talk about, is just don't put so much pressure on yourself to think that you need to fit or look or be a certain way to be sexually desired by your partner. And that's something that is like deep rooted in the thoughts that we tell ourselves, right? Like, I really feel like confidence is just, that's the stories that we're telling ourselves in our brains, and how we're feeling affects so much how we think, and how we think affects how we act. And it really is just this circle. But what I've learned is, you know, just as you have planted planted those thoughts or seeds or ideas in your head of how you're feeling, you can retrain your brain to think in a new way and a new thought pattern. Because if you taught your brain to think like, well, I'm not sexy now, I'm not desired now, I don't look how I did, I'm not this size anymore, then you can also teach your brain like, I am powerful, I am strong, I created life, I'm still beautiful, I still can be sexy, I am desired, right? So really this like whole idea of confidence is just the thoughts that you're planting in your brain. It's the stories that you're telling yourself. And it takes a while and it's hard to do, and I understand, but you really just have to break that cycle of the bad thoughts that you're planting in your head and stop comparing yourself to what you looked like before a baby or any other woman who has had other babies, because we're all on a different journey. We're all going to be affected differently from babies. Like, it's just not fair. Like, women are amazing. The things that we do with our bodies are, we literally create life. We build homes inside of us to give life, human life. Like, the world would not exist if it wasn't for women, right? Because we have these babies. Like, we're so freaking powerful, but then so hard on ourselves, and we don't give ourselves enough credit because we're like, well, you know, I had this baby and now my skin is stretched out, and so now I'm just not sexy. And it's like, maybe there's somebody out there in the world who has planted that idea in your head, or who has, like, maybe there's been a partner who said something that made you feel insecure, or maybe you read something on Instagram or saw something on Instagram and you tell yourself that that is the truth, and that's just not true. Because like, your partner loves you and they desire you and they want to be with you and they want to connect with you, and you just have to stop like holding yourself back from allowing them to love you. And truly, like, it starts with you loving yourself and giving yourself grace and accepting yourself and finding confidence in other things, right? Maybe it's like, okay, maybe you don't have your six pack anymore, or your stomach's not flat, it's like a little more rounded or whatever. Like, number one, you can fix that if you want to, if that's something that, like, that's a path you want to go down, there's options for that. Number two, exercise and just like getting those endorphins pumping and just doing something positive for yourself will always make you feel better. Eating healthy, sleeping more than you probably should, which is so hard as a mom, but like doing all those things that you know, I call them like the primary answers of like what you know to be true, to be good for your body, always brings confidence. Whenever you're taking care of yourself, you just feel more confident about yourself. But really then, like, also doing this internal work of like allowing yourself to be like, hey, I do look different now, and that's okay. I still am desired. I still can be loved. I know it's like so much easier said than done, and this is something I'm still really working through, but like looking back at my younger self and the insecurities I had, I'm like, really and truly, those all came from places of like me just like thinking that like, oh, this is different now, so now it has to look this way. And it's just not true. It really just doesn't. And I think like, you know, being vulnerable with your partner and saying like, hey, I just feel this way now, like, and just opening up to them. And something that like you guys, you know, I don't know if everybody will agree with, but when I realized like it's not up to my partner to make me feel sexy, I can make myself feel sexy, like, was a total game changer for me, because I realized I was like putting so much emotional pressure and so much emotional just like connect on my partner when, you know, like it's okay to say, hey, like when you do these things, it does make me feel more confident or it does make me feel loved. But truly, like, it had to start with me, and realizing that like I don't have to put all this pressure and all these expectations on someone to be in charge of my emotions and where I'm at. I can actually take that control back and help myself to feel that way. And that just changed everything for me. And it just made me feel happier. And I know that like it's important to have your partner like value you and desire you, but maybe they do that in other ways that isn't necessarily like how you think fits into this box of like making you feel sexy. Maybe it's like they did an extra load of laundry, or they let you sleep in, or they took the kids to Costco so you could have some quiet time at home. Whatever that looks like, communicate with your partner and just say like, hey, like when you're thinking of me and you are trying to make me feel sexy or loved, like how are you doing that? Like, what does that look like for you? And you might be surprised in how they answer that, because I think that we have it in our minds that it has to be like candlelight dinners and they're buying us this sexy lingerie and they're giving us these certain kinds of compliments that fit into these like checklists for us to be like, okay, now I'm sexy because this was done for me. Do you see what I'm saying? Are you following me here? Like, you don't have to put that emotional pressure on anyone else and turn like over your power to someone to make you feel a certain way when you can take that back and feel that way for yourself. Ooh, this is another juicy one, but can you talk about how to get the confidence to talk dirty? It is so hard to, because I feel so awkward. I totally get that, because it's like, it's all in your head. It's like, if I say it like this, are they gonna think this, right? And it's like that fear of the reception, so then you don't put it out there. But I think like practicing, and I know that might sound funny, but like role playing and practicing can help a lot. And you can like start really small, right? Like move up the scale. Maybe start with like a text, and then like ask them like, what do you like, you know, and have that conversation and go back and forth. And that can be a really good lead up to like the actual thing. And then just like do little small increments of it. And then like the more you get comfortable with it, hopefully it just like opens Pandora's box, and by the end you're like full on, you know. This is another really good one. How do you deal with a low sex drive as a woman? First and foremost, go and get your hormones checked, especially if you've had kids. That can just be a total game changer. It could be something as low as like low testosterone in a woman that you could actually get on a supplement or a cream, or they have pellets that can change things for you. And also, I didn't know this, but women's sexual like prime and peak is actually in their like 30s and later 30s, and men is in their 20s. I'm like, why, God, like, why can't we have lined that up, right? Just like from our 20s to our 50s, it was just, we're all in our sexual prime, right? But for women, I didn't know that. It's like later on in life for us. And then also after you have kids, your hormones, you've just gone through so much. So go to an endocrinologist, have them do a full panel blood work, and just see if your hormone levels are off. That could be something that helps. Also, there are supplements that you can take. There was something that I recommended on another podcast, and so many people sent reviews and they're like, this actually works. I'll link it down below. It's just like an herbal supplement. Probably just also helps again with that hormone support. But like a low sex drive isn't something to feel bad about. It's not something to feel guilty about. It could be just linked, I think, so much back to your health, your hormones, how you're taking care of your body, how you're taking care of yourself, your emotional, mental state, like your mental health is so important. Like, are you taking care of yourself there? Also, always just talk with your partner and be open with them and be like, hey, this is where I'm at. It's not you. Like, these are things that I'm concerned about, and just having that conversation. I think like as couples, there's so much that we fear of like, oh, they're going to think I'm weird, or they're going to think I'm whatever. But like, they're your partner in this life, and they're the person that you should lean on, and they should be your rock, and you should be able to open up and talk to them about anything. And I know that can feel scary and vulnerable, but when you do that, you get just so much closer as a couple, and you get to feel less alone in those feelings that you're having. The last one I want to talk about is actually from a good friend of mine, and she said, Carly, I'm so excited for this one. We've had these talks 7 years and never fully felt comfortable with myself or any of that. Would love all of your advice. So I think the thing with sex is really it's such a complex thing, because I think like there's so many elements that can affect your relationship or your thoughts about sex. It's like how you were raised, right? How your parents, kind of the culture that your parents raised you in, like the conversations they had with you about sex, how they viewed sex, how they like raised you to view and feel, and like your relationship with sex. There's religion. If you were raised in a religion where like sex is just taboo, you didn't talk about it, there was like kind of a lot of shame built around sexual relationships, like that can strongly influence how you're feeling now. The culture, right? Like the community that you were raised in. If everyone in your community kind of has the same like belief and thought process about sex, like there's just a lot of different influences just like go through our brains, right? And I think what's really important that's helped me so much as a woman is to actually like stop and step back and be like, but how do I feel about sex? What is my relationship with sex? Like, and just going through this exercise of like, why is sex important to me? And like write down my thoughts there, right? And kind of dive into that. And then thinking about like, how do I feel about sex? How do I want to talk to my kids about sex? If my kids have sex before marriage, Or, you know, how am I going to talk to them about that? How do I want them to feel? Like, what is a safe place for us and for my family to have this conversation? And in our house, like, if you know me, we're very open. We're very open. We talk about everything. We don't hide. We make jokes. We flirt with each other in front of our kids. I don't want my kids to feel shame around like having the desire or curiosity about sex. I think sex is a natural thing. It's a powerful tool. It's something that God gave all of us to feel that way for a certain reason. So really just take time to like deconstruct your thoughts and where you're at and how you feel about sex, and make sure it's not like, I feel this way because my parents taught me this way, or I believe this because this is how I was raised to feel this way. And really just like finding out your own truth and your own beliefs about sex and like your relationship there is so important, because it is so personal. Pleasure and sex and your relationship with that is a powerful tool, and it's something that you need to be confident and secure in with like where you're at with that, and not because you were told to feel that way or told to believe that way. And I know that's really hard, because that could be taking years of deconstruction of like influence and beliefs and shame. And shame is such a powerful thing that like really shapes us into who we are and how we believe. But really, like, sex is not a bad thing, and we just need to like we need to normalize that. We need to normalize talking about this. Sex is not a bad thing, that it can be a powerful thing, or it could be something that's maybe not powerful to you. I try to think about like my kids, and, you know, like if they came to me like, you know, tonight, like whatever, this is what happened with this person. Like, I just never want my kids to feel less fully whole as a human being, or less loved, or less looked at as like a great person because they decided to like do that with somebody else. And I know like religiously a lot of people won't agree with me there, and that's okay. But I think that shame is like the number one factor that drives people away from wanting to be religious, or like wanting to open up, or wanting to have honest conversations, because you don't need to feel like less of a person because of something maybe you did, right? This is a hard conversation to have. It's a hard conversation to have because I think there's like a lot of complexities, there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of ground to cover, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. And especially if you're coming from like a cultural influence, a religious influence, how you were raised, like there's so many different things that can pour into your cup that shape your beliefs. And so really just like looking at that and like taking a step back, like I think just like the number one thing that you need to do is like find your own personal journey with like how you feel about that and how you relate to that, and deconstruct everything else that's like shaped you to believe or feel a certain way, and just like really take time for you to be like, how do I feel about this? How do I relate with it? So my best advice would be to just do that, to like really just peel back the layers of influence that has shaped your beliefs, your belief system, and your relationship with that, and to dive deeper into why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and just to like really like push everything out and just take time for you and to find a new relationship with that. The thing that I think is so hard with sex is it is something, it's like shelved for something that like a lot of people don't talk about normally, because it does feel very like it's your body and you're naked and it's intimate, and it feels very much so like that's that kind of a conversation. But then in the same breath, sex is something that's very over sexualized, and it's painted in a very specific light and in a very specific way that for 99.9% of us is not relatable, right? It's like this like glamorized version of like these perfect bodies and sexiest, hottest people. And it's like really painted and made to think that like, unless you look like that, move like that, have this visual appeal, then your sex and your relationship with sex can't be as good or beautiful or fun or sexy as what society wants us to like adapt. Does that make sense? Like, and that was the biggest disconnect for me that I had with sex, was that like, unless I was looking like a Victoria's Secret model or this hottest desired porn star, that my sex wasn't good, and that I wasn't like living up to some expectation that I was thinking that I needed to like bring to the table. But honestly, like once I really deconstructed like how toxic and unhealthy that was, and realized that like my sexual experiences all come down to like what I desire and what I pleasure and like what I want or how I find pleasure, that's my ownership. That's where I get to have control over. And that is so important, because when you give your power away and you start chipping at your worth because of your looks or like what you think is like expected of you or what you owe somebody, like you truly are giving your power away and a piece of you away in letting other people control like just your own fulfillment. And once I really separated that and I was like, wow, like I get to have my own relationship with sex. I get to have take my own power back with like how I find pleasure, how I want to have sex, like how I talk about it, how I connect with it in my relationship, and how I use it as a tool in my marriage, just really changed everything for me. And it's just because like of the lies that we're fed through like being just like over sexualized as women in society and how we think that we need to look, show up, or act. And we really like just shelf it as this like, well, I'm not going to talk about it, it's just taboo, when really we just need to normalize it as human beings and like have more healthy conversations around sex and being sexual and what that looks like, and understand that it's 100% normal and it can be a good thing. So you guys like this conversation? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear your feedback. If you're watching on Spotify, you can leave me a review or a comment. I actually see them. If you're watching on Apple, you can leave me a review or share the podcast if you're not able to leave a review yet. I would love if you shared this and tagged me. If you're watching on YouTube, you better be leaving me a comment because you know I see those. And we will see you guys next week. We're going to be talking about friendships and breakups in friendships and why it feels so much harder to break up with a friend than it does an actual breakup. Or maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. We'll see you next week. And I hope you have the best sexual Valentine's ever. Bye, you guys.